Hello, neighbors. I am just a neighbor volunteer. I'm not on the community council, but we have many members here representing our neighborhood leadership council. And we have an exciting agenda because we have city representatives from several departments, Parks and Rec, the Office of City Development and Planning, Department of Transportation, and 2 council members. So one is en route, so we're going to give her a few minutes to attend. So in the meantime, grab some cookies and please introduce yourself to a neighbor. And if you don't get your questions answered tonight, there'll be some time at the end for Q&A, but we know lots of people have questions about the comprehensive One Seattle plan. So if you don't get your question addressed, we do have some index cards and a Q&A questions and comments box up here. You can put it in there and we're gonna have people follow up. So, all right, introduce yourselves like at old-fashioned church or something.
If you have other topics that you'd like us to consider covering at the next general meeting, which would be in October, please put that on a Post-it note on the door into the cafeteria here. And thank you all for coming. We'll get started in just a couple minutes.
Okay, it looks good.
Test one. Yeah, make sure you see like little green dots popping up.
Yep. Okay.
All right, we're about to get started. Ready? Yeah. You can hear that? All right, we're going to get started. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Want to thank everyone for being here today. Those of you who come in person and those of you who are joining us online, thank you very much. How many people have been to a community meeting before? I see some hands. Wow. All right. Can we give a round of applause to the Outreach Committee for pulling this off? We're happy to do these in person again. I know Rebecca and her team over there have been working really hard, so we're really happy that you all are here. We have a big agenda packed today. So we're going to have speakers from the Seattle Parks and Rec Department, Department of Transportation. We're going to have our council members here. Thank you for coming. And we're going to have a panel on the One Seattle plan shortly after that. We do have a packed agenda, and we want to make sure we can get to everyone's questions. So we are going to be moderating all of the questions tonight. There is a box over here by Kristen. You can raise your hand, Kristen. Thank you. If you're here in person, go ahead and hop over there and drop your questions in there. We'll make sure we get to as many as we can. If we can't get to all the questions, we will be following up with the representatives to get your questions answered. If you're online, definitely drop them in the chat, and Kristen will be helping us there as well. And with that, I think we can get started. Great. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the Seattle Parks and Rec and the Department of Transportation. You guys can clip these if you want. Sure. You guys clip if you want, or you can hold it.
Okay.
I'm gonna do that one for you as well. Let it go green first.
Do you want to come up, Esme?
No? Okay. Test. Cool.
Great.
All right.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having us. My name is Jordan Hoy. I'm a planner with Seattle Parks and Recreation. Also from Seattle Parks and Recreation, we have Casey Smith from Public Relations, and we also have Asmita Podell, who's also in the planning unit, and we're joined here with SDOT.
Hi, I'm Michael Taylor Judd. I'm an outreach person with SDOT, Seattle Department of Transportation.
So first of all, thanks to the Maple Leaf Community Council for inviting our team here. We're here primarily for the Maple Leaf Greenway Connection project, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that because it just completed its construction. We made some Greenway connections from the neighborhood Greenway in Northgate through to Lake City through the park itself. So the northern connection recently was paved over, and we added some wayfinding signage in the form of thermoplastic rainbow signage, like what you see at parks. And then we also have some maple leaves around the area to guide bicycles on the shared use path. So this is a part of the Activating and Connecting Greenways program, which is a park zone program that works in conjunction with the Seattle Department of Transportation's Neighborhood Greenway program to activate and improve connection to and through our park system.
Yeah, and we're excited to be in partnership with parks on things like this. You know, we often get requests from folks, you know, for safety reasons. They want to have great, you know, separated, protected bike lanes. We often hear from folks that they want a bike network that connects them to the places that they want to go. And so something like this, the opportunity to work in partnership, actually bring the bike trail into the park, actually lead you, your neighbors, your family through the park and in a fun way with the maple leaf signs. It's just a really exciting project to be a part of.
So the Maple Leaf Park is the example that we're here for this neighborhood. It's the first one. And then we're also doing some projects throughout other areas in Seattle, such as Judkins Park and then also Rocks Hill Park. And then we'll be continuing our collaboration to improve connection to and through parks as the program continues.
There's some flyers around that's got a couple of pictures. There's a asphalt sort of pathway into the park that was put in to help smooth and create a more presentable entrance. And then there's also, and this is a bit of an old mailer, so some of you, depending on if you live nearby, may have actually received the mailer, but a mailer that has a map that shows the route here that goes into the park. It shows the existing greenway in green that was extended through the park. Then there's also an orange line here. There's also a safe routes to school extension of the greenway that was going to be built past Olympic View Elementary. I regret to say that I'm here to let you know that while we had said we were expected that to launch as soon as spring, that construction has been delayed probably until next year. We're still doing it, I promise. It's a big, we love all these safe routes to schools, but as SDOT is evaluating budget going to the end of the year, as we're wrapping up the current levy and preparing for what the next levy is going to look like, we're trying to prioritize projects, and unfortunately this one's just kind of been delayed a little bit as we figure out what the crews can get to and what they can't. But I'm happy to answer any questions that people have about that. Yes.
So the intersection of 12th and 88, there are no wheelchair ramps.
Okay.
And because of that, everyone that walks, runs, jogs, bikes, strolls in the street. And nobody stops at the stop sign. There's 4 stop signs, there's a 4-way stop, nobody stops. A few people do, not many. Many blaze through it, and I just really worry that with everyone walking the street, and that is on 12, is where they're walking, and someone's blazing around the corner, it's gonna be a wreck. Either 2 cars or a car pedestrian, car, bike, whatever. I have heard a couple slamming on the brakes and yelling, so it's gonna happen. But I don't know why there's no wheelchair ramps. I've written twice to the city and twice have gotten a note back of the form letter, basically, who are you writing this for? I'm like, what person? And I'm like, well, a whole lot of people? So I don't know why there's no wheelchair ramps there when there are wheelchair ramps all the way up 12, but not at the entrance, not at the busiest intersection.
I don't know. I don't have an exact answer for you. Why not that one? I can tell you, if you grab this, my name and my cell phone number are on here, or the Neighborhood Greenways email address is on here. And if you send some to that, it'll get to me. I can certainly look into that. I mean, what I can tell you is, SDOT, the city, we're currently under an order to build a whole lot more curb ramps, and we have some funding, which is good, but to meet ADA accessibility standards. So we are, I don't want to give a number because I might give the wrong number, but we've done a lot of intersections of that this year. We're doing more next year. We're doing more the year after that. So it's possible that's in the queue. But again, I'll try to remember, but if you want to actually send me an email, I can find out if that's in the queue or if there's some reason why it's not. And get you as much answer as I can.
All right, thanks. But it is part of the Greenway. It's a safety.
All the more reason we should have it there then. So, yeah.
But I also want to say I'm also Maple Leafs.
Thank you.
Very nice.
All right, we got a couple questions from online. Can you speak to any efforts to plant additional trees in the park?
I think that would be me. Yes, so we have an urban forestry crew within parks, and they have a tree replanting program. And I don't know the specifics about Maple Leaf Park itself, but I know that they have their set of criteria in terms of prioritizing equity, priority neighborhoods, and they have a rollout plan that's approved internally. But I could look into that and follow up with your community, like pertaining to Maple Leaf Park itself. Oh, okay.
That question comes up all the time. People don't realize that the bulk of the green grass part of the park is the water reservoir underneath.
Yes.
12 inches of soil, no trees. So there's not a lot of room to plant trees once you back out all of that space. And that's something, people don't even realize there's a reservoir.
Absolutely. Thanks for, so I'll just repeat that for folks that couldn't hear that. But as many of you are aware, Maple Leaf is a reservoir park. And so that is a partnership between Seattle Public Utilities and Seattle Parks and Recreation. And because it being a capped reservoir, that limits the type of landscaping that we're able to do on top, as well as the type of maintenance we're able to do, and also prohibits the planting of trees or any sort of vegetation that has deeper roots.
All right, I think you got one for transportation. Is there any efforts to fix the holes in the fences along the Lake City Way tunnel?
I'll be honest, I have no idea. Again, I don't know. I am not aware of any current projects in the queue to do that, but it may just be that it hasn't gotten to an outreach point.
That's my question.
So,
Let me just ask.
Yeah.
I've asked Rachel, I've asked everybody. I never get an answer. There was an attempt, they did fence some of the holes. There's one right next to the tunnel that's on the, right by Lake City Way, the extension, the surface extension of Lake City Way, right at 75th Street. And there's a big hole there, and that's how the taggers get down. And of course, they're good at tagging because the combination of you and WADOT, SDOT and WADOT is like the worst I've ever seen because you guys don't work together. I mean, it's apparent to me, otherwise, I mean, it took me 2 years of asking to get even the holes that were repaired, but you left the one right there open. Either you or WADOT, I'm assuming it's WADOT, but it's a, it's a danger for people. And if everybody here who goes under that tunnel is at risk. Because I have a house that's right next to it, not where I live right by the reservoir, but the house there, my neighbors watch people dropping rocks and bottles on cars from the tunnel lid, and they'll testify to that. I have photographs, lots of photographic evidence that I've sent to all of our, both of our representatives from, was Peterson before, but of them, when the RVs were there, they're rolling tires down on people. I mean, no one has 10 tires on the side of the road out of that. These guys are up there for their jollies, rolling tires on the vehicles down below. Now, that hasn't happened since they cleared out the camp. But every once in a while, I think any of us who travel Lake City Way, the surface street, see RVs there occasionally. And as long as you leave a big hole there, you're inviting disaster.
I can certainly look into it. If it is, if it is a WashDOT owned facility and not a city owned facility.
Can't you guys work together on this? I don't care who can fence it, just fence it.
I can say that we are engaging with the city more than the past boards have, and we have Dakota here who can talk to you, and we can get some stuff working.
I mean, everybody's life is at risk if the tires roll down.
All right, got a couple more questions here, and then we'll move on. We got one more question. All right, we know traffic is a huge concern, especially from 15th and Roosevelt. What kind of traffic mitigation has been considered?
Has been considered. I mean, I feel very comfortable saying that our department and Director Spots are very committed to the Vision Zero program. We're aware that things have really gotten, frankly, out of control in Washington State. Pedestrian deaths and accidents have gone way up. And so our department is really committed to what can we do to get those numbers back down? What can we do to make sure that this continues to be a safe place where people want to get out and travel, whether you're in a car, whether you're on a bike, whether you're with your kids, whether you're walking. I mean, as Director Spots like to say, even folks who drive all the time, the moment you park and get out of your car, you're a pedestrian like everybody else. And it's going to take time. We're literally redesigning some streets. We're putting up more signs. We're putting up larger signs. We're redesigning streets in some ways to make them better, in some ways to try and get, some of our neighbors who maybe aren't being as courteous or aren't as aware of laws as the rest of us are. And so we're literally trying to redesign and modernize things, and that's going to take a while. But we are definitely looking at that and committed to that. There's no doubt in my mind, and I'm sure the council members here would agree with that as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we need to move on. So we're going to go ahead and get your question written down, and we'll make sure we follow up with them and come back to you directly. Okay, great.
I didn't hear anything concrete from what you just said, but you committed. But that doesn't help me living on the street, dodging traffic. that is using 88 or any of the streets in Maple Leaf as cut throughs. And so that doesn't really help families with little children.
I can talk about one thing that we are doing as a board. One of the things that Dakota and the advocacy board's looking into is more pedestrian flashers and other crosswalks so that we can make sure we have more protected spaces for people to cross across those bigger arterials. So that is something we are actively working on.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just an outreach person, so I can commit to hearing your concerns, taking them back, but I'm not a decision maker. I don't get to tell you whether it can happen or not. But, I certainly hear you, and I'm happy to bring that feedback back.
We-
Just really, is somebody documenting these questions for you? So you can
We
go
are.
back?
Yep. Yeah, we
And-
got them right over here.
And I mean what I said, my name, my cell phone number on here. If you call that, you'll get me, so.
All right. Thank you.
Can I say one thing before we end? I just want to say before we leave, just thanks for having us, and we're going to leave our contact information here over on this table. We do have some flyers for a park opening event that's happening over in Pathways Park just down the way. So if you're available June 8th, please feel free to stop by. There's going to be a celebration. Also, if you have any other park-related inquiries, we just finished up our Parks and Open Space Plan analysis, and our Park Community Fund is now entered into the community intake process. So please reach out.
Awesome. All right, we're going to move on to our council members. We want to make sure we have time for the panel at the end. So we are going to ask that if you have any more questions, we're going to go ahead and get them written down so that we can get them asked quickly so we can get to the panel. But we're going to invite Kathy Moore and Maritza Rivera. Thank you. Yeah. Can everyone in the back hear us? Okay. You can pin this if you want, or you can hold it, but just project so that everyone in the back can hear you. The microphone's right there, so just speak into it and it'll work.
I don't have to press.
You can,
Okay.
you can just hold it and pin it on there. Once this sounds
All right.
perfect.
Can you hear me? Yes, okay.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Oh,
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Kathy Moore. I'm your relatively newly elected representative for District 5, which we are currently in. District 5 is 85th to 145th, and it runs from the lake to the sound. So it's quite a huge geographic district. And I'm just thrilled to be here. It's wonderful to actually be here in person. I have really enjoyed being able to meet with people again in person. And to that point, I wanted to let you know I do have district hours every Thursday at the Lake City Service Center. And you can sign up for those district hours on my website. I also try to have district hours the first Saturday of every month, and then I have remote hours the third Wednesday of every month. So just trying to make sure that I'm out there and available, and come and tell me whatever you want to tell me. So anyway, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
hi, good evening. It's a little bit, this mic is a little different. I'm Maritza Rivera. I'm the council member for District 4, which is a small part of Maple Leaf and then goes into Roosevelt, View Ridge, Wallingford, Wedgwood, Hawthorne Hills, Laurelhurst, Sandpoint, Ravenna, and the University District. I think I named most of them. I have in district hours, actually, speaking of in district hours, every other I alternate between Wallingford because that's one neighborhood that's in the district that's on the west side of I-5. Most of the district is on the east side. And so I also do district hours in Magnuson Park. My staffer, Wendy Sykes, is here, and she is the person that helps me do outreach to constituents, and you can reach out to her with any questions or concerns, or if you need help with any of the city departments or any of the things that you're doing. She's the person to reach out to, and she's happy to help connect you or find answers to questions. So I wanted to flag that for her. Gary, I had not heard about the issue that you're talking about, so Wendy gave you her card, and please do reach out to her and she'll follow up with you on that particular issue, because we want to make sure safety is primary. In fact, I got into the race when I was running because of public safety, not just crime related, but also pedestrian safety. And so, safety in general. So I want to make sure that we are addressing safety in all our neighborhoods in the D4. In general, I care about public safety, crime, pedestrian safety, making sure folks when they're walking, making sure that we're doing more curb cuts. I know that's something that the city has prioritized over the years. I've been at the city for for many years, in my latest iteration about 6 years, and I know that SDOT has been looking at curb cuts and has been working on it for a long time, not as fast as we would like to any of our satisfaction, but as we all know, the second iteration of the Move Seattle levy is coming up. It will be before all of you as voters in the fall, and so SDOT I know is working with constituents and with us to ensure that there are things in there that will be helpful for the public. And one of the things I'll say that I'm looking very closely at the levy language, and what's in the levy is related to pedestrian safety, sidewalks, new sidewalks, repairing of sidewalks, curb cuts, and things of that nature, safe routes to school. And things of that nature, because we have a lot of schools in our district, and we want to make sure that we're having, safe crosswalks and as kids are walking to school. So these are the things that keep me up at night. It's just a little bit a smattering of what we're working on in the office. And I'm just really excited to be here to listen to you all and address some of your issues and concerns. I know this is a very short forum, so if you have questions, do please reach out if we don't get to them today. And every other week, first Thursday and third Thursday, and I alternate. Sorry, thank you for that.
All right, so we are going to take some questions. If you have them, please raise your hand, and we have Danielle in the back who will get your questions brought over. We do want to get some questions from online, though. We are also going to watch the time, and if there are questions about the One Seattle plan, I believe you two are staying for the panel, so we'll make sure we get those questions answered then as well. Starting off, can you share if there are any steps being taken to bring more small businesses to Maple Leaf?
Do you want to? You want me to? Maple Leaf businesses?
Yep.
I actually don't know if there are more businesses coming to Maple Leaf, but I know that the businesses that are here in general in the D4, I am super interested in making sure that we're working with small businesses to ensure they're staying. Those that are there are staying. I know they've experienced a lot of public safety issues, and about a week and a half ago, I had a public safety small business walk with some of the businesses on 55th that have been experiencing crime. And so I've been working with the businesses in the D4 and look forward to working with businesses at Maple Leaf, the ones that are on my side of it, in the D4, to make sure that they're being supported, and if they're experiencing crime, that we are addressing that, and to ensure that they're staying in the neighborhood. And we welcome more businesses in the neighborhood for sure, in the neighborhoods.
And I'll just follow up with, I'm not specifically sure about Maple Leaf specifically, but we are working with Build Lake City together in Lake City, and they are in the process. They have applied to have a business improvement area, and that should be happening relatively soon. And we are also in discussions with trying to have a business improvement area in Northgate, and also potentially, I know there's one opening being formed in Finney. So my idea would be if we could have an overarching business improvement area, which would sort of have sub neighborhoods, and certainly Maple Leaf continuing to grow and being much more vital would be a wonderful addition to that. So that's where we're at in terms of business improvement areas as a general strategy for the district.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, do you know of any resources or any support for residents who want to start businesses in their neighborhood?
I would say that the best place to start with that would be the Office of Economic Development. They have a small business incubator program and staff. They have a particular program, the name escapes me at the moment, but it is working with smaller businesses and particularly businesses of immigrant, refugee, and minority-owned businesses to bring them together to form an LLC where they can then buy the commercial property and then they rent it back to themselves. So it's a way of making it more affordable, making sure that businesses are not being displaced as it becomes more expensive, basically, to lease and rent space. So the Office of Economic Development would be the best place to begin. And I was remiss in not introducing Henry Paulette, and you might recognize the last name, who is my district relations person and a wonderful resource. And he's here, he'll be here to answer questions and has cards, but he would also be a good resource if you are a small business and you're looking for resources and how to make those connections. Please reach out to Henry.
And I would just add, in terms of the Office of Economic Development, they have small business advocates that do work with small businesses and with folks. There are some, technical resources for the office to orient folks that are interested in starting a business. And also, I think a great resource, the business improvement districts that Councilmember Moore was talking about is a good starting point. There's a business improvement district in the U District, and that is, a consortium of small businesses, but they have someone that leads that. It's like a nonprofit for businesses, and you can reach out to them, and they can also orient you to how you go about starting a business, and they have some technical support of that nature. So I would say both the small business advocates at Office of Economic Development and the business improvement districts. For us, it's in the U District. It's called U District Partnership, and you can reach out to them. If you're interested, and even if you're not in the U District, it's okay to reach out. They're really great about sharing resources and orienting folks.
Awesome. We have time for just a few more questions, so if you are writing them down, make sure you get them over to Danielle. And again, if we don't get to all of them, we will have the panel after this, and we can follow up with your offices directly. Thank you. One quick question. We are going to touch a little bit on the One Seattle plan. If density homes are increased, how will this impact proposed school closures, for example, for 2025?
Can you?
Of course. If density homes are increased, what about the proposed school closures for 2025? And how will this impact school closures?
You're saying with increased density in the neighborhoods, how will that impact? That's a really great question, and I too have the same question. As everyone knows, Seattle Public Schools is not under the authority of the city. They're a separate entity. City does partner with them, and we provide supports through the Families Education Preschool and Promise Levy. But we don't have the full insight, certainly not at the city council level, to what Seattle Public Schools is doing. And so the school board's recent discussion about potential school closures. But I will say that in general, in terms of the One Seattle plan, it's really important and something that we've been pushing the departments. And the department who's in charge of the comp plan is the Office of Planning and Community Development. We've been having a lot of conversations about the importance of not doing things in a vacuum and making sure that part of these plans is all the amenities that come when you are trying to do more density in the neighborhoods. And that includes schools, retail, the transportation, making sure there's access points to public transportation, roads, bike lanes, and things of all of that. As you all know, the comp plan, it sets goals. It doesn't set rules or laws or regulations. The goals are really important because when the city council, for instance, is setting rules, we look to the goals in the comp plan as we are setting those rules and regulations. But so it's important to have as goals, what are we going to do about schools? And so it's important and I would think that the mayor is working closely with Seattle Public Schools as they are looking at potential school closures and what that would look like for the city and for the comp plan. So all these conversations are ongoing. It's a really great question. We all have the same questions as well, and we're going to be looking at all that.
If I may just add, I think one of the intents of the comp plan, and certainly something that I'm committed to, and I'm quite certain Councilmember Rivera is too, is in increasing the density. We want to make sure that we're not looking at just studios and one bedrooms, that we're also making sure that we have family size units. So right now, the regulations really favor only 2 bedrooms, and we really need to have more. We need to have 3 bedrooms and more. We need to be looking at ways to incentivize the building of family size housing. So the goal is to have density where we have room for families, which I hope would then mean we'd continue to have the critical mass to keep the schools open in Seattle and to have neighborhood schools, which are such an important piece of our One Seattle.
And, may I add, separate to the comp plan, I'm interested in learning more about the school closures in general, because comp plan or not, we are all living here now, and there are a lot of parents and families that are impacted by that would be impacted if these potential school closures do happen. So it's not even about the comp plan is forward-looking, and I'm interested in hearing how the Seattle Public Schools is going to be dealing with these potential closures, how it impacts families now, today, that are in those schools. So that's something that I'm going to be looking at, and I'm sure Councilmember Moore is going to be looking at as well. We have a lot of families, both in the D4 and the D5, and so I'm really interested in what the plan is from Seattle Public Schools if those potential closures are going to come to fruition.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. There's plenty more questions in here, but they are great for the panel. So we're going to go ahead and invite our panel up. I want to thank both the council members for their time, but you guys are going to stay on. So thank you for that as well. Can I get a round of applause for the council members?
Could you repeat, please?
Yeah. I'm just going to pass them around. If we can get the panel members up, thank you. I'm going to get this to you, and then everyone else will pass this around. Perfect. Make sure we get to this one and this one. We cover the other ones. Pass that one if you want. And we'll follow up with that one. Okay. All right. So we're going to pass these around. This is the microphone, so just go ahead and speak right into it. And we'll share amongst, I think Dakota might share on this side, and I'll have you guys share on this side. That sound good? If you want to sit next to the man? Yeah. Okay. If you can share your mic with these 3. Yeah, sure. And then you 4, you're going to share this mic. So just, yeah, I'll give you guys. So just speak directly into this, and then they'll be able to hear you. Just speak directly into it. So I'll hand it to one of you. It is a hot mic, so just keep that in mind.
Oh. Okay, while she gets situated, welcome everybody to the panel. This is going to be, welcome everybody to the panel. This is going to be basically exclusively on the One Seattle plan. I've tried to pick through and organize the questions that were submitted in the box and online into hopefully something that is informative and coherent. Before we get started, I want to give everybody on the panel just an opportunity to introduce themselves. Maritza, you guys don't need to reintroduce yourselves. So, cool. So we'll start over here.
My name is Jill Killen, and I've owned Cloud City Coffee here in Maple Leaf for about 20 years. And I wrote an op-ed recently saying that the comp plan didn't go far enough, that we needed more density, just speaking as a business owner and watching how my employees have struggled to find a place to live. And just speaking from real life as a business owner in the neighborhood. So.
That's awesome. My name is Chris. I actually moved here in 2019 because I got so excited about the ADU laws. Being able to build ADUs kind of became a thing back in 2019. So I built 3 since, and I'm hoping to build another maybe 4 more next year. And I also agree there's not enough housing, and ADUs are not enough. You know, we're just growing too quickly. So that's why I'm here.
Good evening. I'm Michael Hubner. I'm with the Office of Planning and Community Development. I'm the Long Range Planning Manager, and I'm the Project Manager for the One Seattle Plan Comprehensive Plan Update.
Hi, everyone. I'm Patrice Carroll. I'm also with the Office of Planning and Community Development. I'm part of a large team that we have there that's working on this comprehensive plan update.
Good evening, Maple Leaf. I'm an interloper from the South. Jim O'Halloran is my name. I'm with the Roosevelt Neighborhood Association. I had been the president of the RNA for years in previous decades. Also chair of the Land Use Committee as we worked through an upzone of the Roosevelt neighborhood. Also worked closely with Sound Transit to actually make the decision about the location of the Roosevelt station. So thanks for having me.
Good evening. My name is Michaela Wingard Phillips. I grew up here. I grew up near the Roosevelt station at 70th and 15th. My family owns Math and Stuff at 90th and Roosevelt. My wife and our 20-month-old and I live down at 95th and First. So for the first time in my life, I'm now a Maple Leaf resident. Besides just kind of spending most of my time here. Math and Stuff has been in the neighborhood since 1996. We'd love to stay. We're, working on all those things and have similar, maybe similar ideas and concerns to Jill, but I'm in the middle housing. So I'm interested in the, 3-bedroom units. I'm in that population that has been priced out of homes in the city. And so I have a lot of opinions, but those may or may not be applicable tonight.
Thanks, everybody, for introducing yourselves. This first question, just to kind of level set, I'm going to just direct to OPCD, and then I'll go through some more specific questions and hopefully get everybody's perspectives on some of what we've asked. So just to set the stage, can you please explain, as you understand it, what exactly in the comprehensive plan affects Maple Leaf specifically and how?
Well, that's a good entree for me, just briefly saying what a comprehensive plan is to begin with. The comprehensive plan is comprehensive. It addresses a wide range of policy topics that influence, and I think Councilmember Rivera, very correctly characterized it as setting the goalposts, if you will, the intention of the city across a range of areas: land use, housing, transportation, parks and open space. We were talking about that tonight. Very wonky nuts and bolts, the pipes and the pavement that make the city work, the utilities and capital facilities. The city's priorities and its plan to address the needs of the city as we grow over the next 20 years is in the comprehensive plan. So across a range of different issues, the comprehensive plan will affect every neighborhood, including Maple Leaf. I suspect that the thrust of the question is around the land use and housing, and looking forward to a great conversation about some of the citywide and also local changes here. So we have a growth strategy in the comprehensive plan. That is that roadmap for growth and development over the next 20 years. We'd have some new concepts in the growth strategy with this update. One of those is just citywide, a new vision for our neighborhoods, which historically have largely been called single-family zoned areas. More recently, that name changed to neighborhood residential. And we have a new state law that the Seattle and many other cities are responding to allow middle housing, the 3 and 4 unit variety. And so there are neighborhood parts of Maple Leaf that are going to have new zoning and neighborhood residential. Happy to talk about those. But there are also the need for planning for more apartments, more units for other types of households along our arterials, for example, along 15th and Roosevelt. Those are served by our frequent transit routes in the city. We are looking at potential upzones along some of those arterials for more low to mid-scale apartments. And then the neighborhood center that is proposed for, more or less the central sort of area of Maple Leaf centered around 90th and Roosevelt is more of a node of more apartment zoning around the commercial district. Happy to talk about that. A little bit further north, and it's within shooting distance of here, we're also proposing in this plan a new, what we're calling an urban center around the new light rail station that's going to be coming online at 130th Street. The boundaries of which? No, I understand. We haven't set boundaries for any of the neighborhood centers yet. There are 24 of them proposed in the plan. The intent here is to get public feedback on the idea of neighborhood centers, their general location, their size, the vision for those places in terms of housing and supporting small businesses, and to take that back into our work at OPCD and create draft zoning maps, which would have a boundary, as well as what proposed zoning changes, the heights and the types of housing, other changes within the neighborhood center. And we would be releasing those in the fall and coming back out to talk to you all and other neighborhoods and to get your feedback.
Are those going to be part of the comprehensive plan, or just all the dimensional things, the actual boundaries of them? Or does it, we're here and we're like, maybe we're wanting to support this plan, but it's a bit, when you have this kind of nebulous concept and a dramatic change in the housing proposed, I think there's really kind of dynamic that makes us anxious.
I totally understand that. From our perspective, let me explain what we tried to do with this phasing of the work, which is not to go out there into community with a fully baked idea with boundaries, with all of the zoning developed and proposed. We want to hear what you have to say now before we add all the ingredients to the cake and put it in the oven. We're going to come back out with that more detailed proposal so that you can provide feedback at both stages in the project. And to answer your question about will it be in the comprehensive plan, the boundaries will, the zoning will not. Zoning is separate legislation. The council will be considering both legislation to amend the plan and the zoning in late 24 into 2025, but they are separate technically.
So I'm going to move on just so we can get to all these questions. So this one I'm going to sort of direct to the board, to the whole panel. Whoever has an idea on how to answer it first, feel free to jump in. And I want it to be kind of a dialogue on this one for a minute. And then we'll move on to the next question. So the question is, how can we effectively balance maintaining the tree canopy in the neighborhood with the increased height limit and floor to area ratios that would be required to encourage financially viable development that meets the growth needs of the city?
Anybody have a magic wand?
Well, maybe I can kick this off a little bit because I followed the tree ordinance, which I think the last council passed, and I think it was 7 years in the making, and it was quite the negotiation. So there's already very comprehensive tree legislation, tree preservation legislation out there, and that's separate from comp plan. But I think one other point, and then I'll open up to anyone else, is like if you build higher and you can cover like a smaller part, there's less like lot coverage required. So one thing that I'd be really interested in seeing, I think a lot of other people in the Complete Communities Coalition as well, would be a floor area ratio bonus for stacked flats. Because right now you can't build stacked flats in Seattle. It's like, as a developer, it's impossible. That's like an apartment building. You see townhomes only because townhomes are fundable. You can actually get those funded by a bank and you can install them like, I think they're called fee simple. It's very easy, but it's really hard to build apartment buildings, small apartment buildings in Seattle. So, an option.
So I'll also, for folks that are interested in tree canopy, we knew this was going to be a big concern. And so we were very careful to make sure that it was studied as part of our environmental impact statement. So within the EIS, there's a whole section that talks about plants and animals. And the plants that we talk about mostly is tree canopy. And what that analysis does is it looked at a range of alternatives and it talks about the impacts. So one alternative is we don't change the zoning. We leave the zoning the same as it is today. And then, you know, there's increasingly denser alternatives. So there's no alternative where tree canopy isn't going to be impacted. Even if we don't change the zoning, tree canopy is still going to be impacted. So the question is really, what do we do to achieve the 30% tree canopy goal that we have in our urban forestry management plan? It's a goal that we're carrying forward into the comprehensive plan. And there is like a long list of things that the city is doing, has recently done, or could do in the future. And so that's really, you know, where we need to focus our conversation is, and again, the comprehensive plan sets that big goal, 30%, and there's strong support for that goal. The real question is going to be, how do we implement that? How do we work with SDOT? How do we work with Seattle Parks and Recreation and all of the other departments that have policies and programs that affect tree canopy? And then we also have the new tree regulations. And so I think one of the other things is there's a commitment. It's so new. We hope, you know, we think it's going to have a big impact in minimizing the impact to tree canopy through new development, but we don't know yet. We have to see how it's working, and maybe we have to go back and tweak that in the future too. So that's part of it too, to see how the tools that we've set in place work. But yeah, I encourage you, the environmental impact statement is not the most user-friendly document, but it does have a lot of really great information if you're interested in tree canopy and how we can think about that as we think about how the city grows.
And I just add a little detail on the zoning. So with the new neighborhood residential zoning for the middle housing, so this is definitely something we're looking at. There are a whole range of trade-offs under the new state law, which for short we'll refer to as House Bill 1110, that mandates the new 4 units per lot standard for the city of Seattle. One of those is open space. We're looking at, you know, how to set a minimum open space requirement on lots that are redeveloped. We're looking at things like tree planting requirements, and where there's new tree planting on site, that the area set aside for planting is large enough, and perhaps an incentive for the species that are larger trees that provide more canopy or faster growing. And there are choices we can make to help mitigate some of the impact of new development in neighborhoods on tree canopy on the sites that are developed, and then along with all the things that Patrice has talked about as well, street trees, trees in parks and so forth. So it's part of a larger package, but it's a challenge. We're a growing city, and we've set an ambitious goal for trees, and it's something we're working on in many fronts.
Thank you. And in addition to this, I mean, I am encouraged, and I'm happy to hear about that trees are being addressed as part of the comp plan. But, you know, in general, I think for the D4, and I know the D5 as well, trees are really important. Tree canopy across the city is important, particularly, you know, with climate change. And I would say, you know, there is a false dichotomy in terms of development and trees. We can protect our trees while we're doing development, and we just need to be committed to it. And we need to also be prepared to look at the current tree ordinance, and seeing, how is it working, and do we need to make adjustments to it? And I will say, I'm really interested in the regulations, because I know that there have been two old growth trees in the D4 that have been at risk recently. And as we've been talking to constituents and talking to the Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections, who regulates development and trees at the city, making sure that our regulations are strong. And if there is an issue, if there is a developer developing on a piece of property where there is a tree that we are protecting, that if the developer is not acting properly, that we can quickly get an inspector from the city out there to make sure that we are protecting that particular tree. So on the regulation front, it's incumbent on the city, and that's something that I care about, and I know Council Member Moore also cares about, is making sure that we are having a close eye on that. And at least for my part, I want to have a close eye on this tree ordinance and making sure that it is working to preserve canopy across the city. And that if it's not working, if it's not strong enough, then we ought to look at doing amendments. So I'll say that, in addition to the goals that are reflected and will be reflected in the comp plan.
I'm wondering if the guidelines on urban density expectations for different communities in the city of Seattle, how those are going to be decided upon, and are those going to be spread, will the burden of urban density be spread among all of the communities in the Seattle area, or are there specific areas like Maple Leaf that are going to be targeted for this kind of density? I'm just curious.
Before we answer that, we do have that question in here. I do want to remind everyone, please raise your hand. We have 135 people attending. We have to get to all these questions. So we will get your questions answered, but I just want to remind that. Thank you.
You can't go ahead and answer that one, though. It is in the stack.
Oh, you want me to take a cut at
Yeah,
that?
go
Yeah, I'll try. So first of all, Seattle is not alone in planning for growth, and the tremendous challenges our region faces to especially provide the housing that we need. The Puget Sound Regional Council, which is our regional government, has estimated that we have a backlog of housing regionally of almost 50,000 units. So that's our starting point. And all of the cities in our 4-county metro region are doing comprehensive plan updates at the same time. So we are, number one, Seattle is not bearing this responsibility to plan for the future and to address the backlog and the growth that's coming in the future. We're not facing that alone. Within the city, among neighborhoods, is very much something we looked at in developing the proposal that is out there in draft right now, which is the principle that all neighborhoods in the city have a role and a responsibility to make room for the people that are going to be coming here in the future, for addressing our unmet housing needs now. And that's why some of the changes that I summarized with the earlier response, the neighborhood centers, the potential upzones along transit corridors, even the legislators sure was certainly thinking about this in adopting House Bill 1110, which is spreading the responsibility across more area as we grow. And you'll see that reflected in the comprehensive plan. I think if you look at the citywide map, and I saw that there were copies of this this folio around the room. I have extra copies if anybody wants this. It has a really great map. If you if you unfold it, it shows a map of the overall citywide growth strategy, and you will see that there are neighborhood centers and corridors, and then much larger, denser places that have been part of the city's plan for the last 30 years, our urban centers, our urban villages. So a place like Maple Leaf is really one of the gaps between some of those other areas where in the past we've planned for housing, and we're filling in that gap a little bit with something like a neighborhood center, which is a smaller scale, but is something scaled for a neighborhood like Maple Leaf.
Anything else to add, anybody?
I have a question. So if we knew we had 50,000 units immediate need, I wonder why the comprehensive plan didn't go further in planning more housing and calling for more housing. And I'm not aiming this at you particularly, but I'm just curious how they came up with the numbers they came up with, because it didn't give us much more than just doing what we're doing now, which isn't enough.
color to that too. So just for everybody's reference, the proposal sounds like it will, or is estimating it will bring 80 to 100,000 housing units over the next 20 years. In the city's own estimates, we would need 200,000 or more housing units. So I guess the question follow-up is how to make up the gap.
I'll take a first cut at it, and we'll welcome any of the other panelists as well who have been engaged in this. There are a lot of numbers that have been thrown around out there in the press and online. So I want to try to add a little bit of clarity to this. I do want to address the 50,000 because I may have misspoken or that's for the entire metropolitan region. So well beyond just the city of Seattle. That's a regional deficit. So Seattle alone would not be expected to make up that 50,000 deficit. But we have a part in that. I mean, there is a deficit for the city. But for the comprehensive plan, we do our comprehensive plan under the Growth Management Act. That is a state law. Under the Growth Management Act, we are given a target for housing units. That's our floor, our minimum that we are expected to plan for. That's for 80,000 housing units over the next 20 years. We studied several alternatives in our EIS that looked at different levels of growth, recognizing that floor of 80,000 isn't even the rate in fact, it's well below the rate we've been growing over the last decade. So we ought to study options to have us growing even faster. So that's where the 100,000, the 120,000, those are numbers in our environmental impact statement. They're important so that we can study the trade-offs and the impacts of, well, what if we grew faster than our minimal target? What if we grow even faster than that? It's a way of studying those options. But the most important number is when we set zoning rules for how much housing can be built across the city in different neighborhoods, zoning for middle housing, for apartments, high-rise buildings downtown or around some of our light rail stations. We can estimate how much housing is produced by that. We call that capacity. We estimate that the capacity of the proposal that is out there for public review, once we get all the zoning in place, is going to be more than 200,000. That's really, to our mind, the most important number to consider is how big of a plan is this? How much room are we making for growth? So it's much more than our minimal target. There's a very, I think, healthy debate about how much do we really need to reduce the market pressure on housing prices that everybody's been experiencing and feeling pain from. And that's fine. But this plan is a very substantial increase in addressing our housing challenges.
I'm going to pass the mic.
I don't know if any of the other panelists can answer this, but I know that part of the pressure is supply and demand, and that part of it is corporate ownership. So a lot of hedge funds coming in and buying property. Is there anything in the legislation currently or being talked about for future legislation to mitigate the kind of companies outside of the region just buying up our land and then setting the housing prices themselves for their own profit?
I will add a little bit of extra to that. I know that there was a bill recently in the city council to encourage community-based development that I don't know made it out of the city council. So I know that's one sort of broad stroke at it, but I guess if we could talk a little bit more about how to encourage community-based development as opposed to development by external developers.
Yeah, I'll just say so the rules are for what an owner can build on a parcel, and generally we don't distinguish between different kinds of owners, but we've started down that road a little bit. For example, if the owner is a religious organization, there was legislation that passed recently. So there can be a density bonus. And again, that's to encourage a lot of those organizations who are interested in building affordable housing, very in line with their mission. So it's possible that we may see again, there was this recent legislation that didn't pass that wanted to do a similar thing for other nonprofit developers. So we may see something like that in the future.
And I think I would quickly say it's a very difficult thing to regulate and legislate in terms of ownership and the rights that you have to develop your property. The approach we've taken with the comprehensive plan is to provide ample opportunity for all kinds of market rate housing. Some of it's going to be owned and produced by larger businesses or local and otherwise. Some is going to be provide opportunities for small owners, especially the middle housing legislation, to develop their own properties. We're very interested in providing opportunities for a range of options, and also by providing a larger potential supply of market housing. That in and of itself, whether you're a large investment company that's buying up a lot of properties or a small mom and pop, all of those actors are influenced by market forces. And if we have an ample supply of housing, it's going to help reduce the market pressure because we will have more housing.
I think perhaps part of what you were referencing was what they did in Vancouver, where they were limiting foreign ownership, and that has not come before council. And I think we would need to get the data on how much of the housing stock is owned by basically absent foreign owners. It's certainly something I would be willing to look at and consider. I think that one of the things that we need to be really clear about, though, is we absolutely need to build. But I don't think that we are going to be able to build ourselves out of the affordability crisis, honestly. I don't think that the private market alone is going to solve the affordability issue. And we have two current tools. We have the Mandatory Housing Affordability Act, and we have the Multifamily Tax Exemption Credit. And then there's a variety of state programs as well. And the Mandatory Housing Affordability is what we've used to basically create a fund to build affordable housing. And we've done that by giving private developers the choice of either building affordable on-site or paying in lieu into a housing development fund. And one of the things that I chair the Housing and Human Services Committee, and one of the issues that we are going to be looking at either this year or next year is how much benefit have we been getting from the Mandatory Housing Affordability Act? Have we been asking enough? Right now, I think the percentage is 5 or 7% for in lieu. You know, we can certainly increase the amount that we are requiring of developers to contribute to in lieu. We can even begin to talk about requiring on-site performance. One of the ways that we need to incentivize on-site performance, though, is looking at can we combine it with a tax exemption credit. So right now you're not able to do both. So there are a number of legislative tools out there that we need to be looking at, maximizing the use to create more affordable housing. Because quite honestly, I do not believe in a sort of trickle down, we're going to build our way out of it. It will absolutely help. It will decrease the pressure, but it's not going to create the kind of housing we need for people who are nurses, teachers, you know, childcare workers. And when you look at the growth management figures, where the real need in housing is people in 0 to 30% AMI and 50 to 60% AMI. And we are just not really building for that. So that's something that I'm committed to working on. I know my colleague is as well. And I know the city is also interested in that. And we need to work with the state. There's a housing trust fund preservation. I can't remember the name of and we really need to get more money from the state and looking at ways that the state can change laws to also make it easier to incentivize the development of truly affordable and workforce housing.
I think Councilmember Moore is absolutely correct. Like there's like two housing crises. Like one is kind of market rate. It's like your employees not being able to afford housing. And then there's also extremely low income. Like no market kind of subsidize, extremely low income. So that's where kind of we need state programs as well. But I wanted to add a note about corporate ownership. Like BlackRock, is one of the biggest investment firms in the world. They have the largest single family rental portfolio. I think in America, maybe the world, it might be like 1.1% or something. It's a small fraction, but it's the biggest. And they in their disclosures of risk, they have to disclose what the risks are to their investors. And one of the primary risks that they see is upzonings. So, if you own a single family home in a neighborhood that you can't add more housing to, that single family home is going to get more and more expensive as more and more people move to growing cities like Seattle. So one of the primary risks, like if you want to own corporate landlords, the best thing you can do is add more supply, because then you're going to compete, and you're going to compete away their profits. And that's really the primary tool we have. And then we have affordable mandates, et cetera. But
Thanks very much. Anything else? Anybody on the panel?
Can I say one more thing? I mean, this is such a complicated, obviously by all the different responses we've had, this is a really complicated issue. And I think another thing that to consider is that, the truth is post-pandemic, and because of inflation that's made, everything more expensive to build, we just haven't even seen the kind of growth that we were seeing pre-pandemic when, the city really was just booming and there was a lot more development and faster. And so I think, we are having conversations about goal setting on housing. And then the truth is we also are trying to manage for the fact that that development has stalled because of inflation and post the pandemic and some other things. So, we need to keep that into consideration as well. And then we have, at least in the D4, and I would think so in the D5, we have a lot of folks that are aging in place. And that's becoming more and more challenging in a city that's becoming more and more expensive. And so we are mitigating and having to manage for a lot of different situations. So I don't think there isn't a person in the city that doesn't recognize at some level that we do have a housing issue in the city. And that we need to plan, we need to manage for it, we need to be thoughtful. We need to make sure we're looking at infrastructure as we're building, because we can decide we want to build X number of units, but if the infrastructure is not in place, we're not going to be able to do so. And I made a point earlier about, things can't operate in a vacuum. All these considerations need to be part of the conversation. And I think the comp plan is a really great tool that the city has to ensure that all of these thoughts, ideas, and concerns are included in the plan. So as we are planning for growth, we're taking infrastructure into account, for instance, and all these other pressures that folks are feeling, including the building more family housing that Councilmember Moore said earlier. So there's just a lot at play here, and we all need to work together to make sure that we have a robust comprehensive plan that will be we'll set our goals for all these issues that we need to address around housing.
I think also related to infrastructure, I think we should be talking about zoning laws, and just so much of our city is based on single family housing. And, BlackRock hates upzoning, but I would argue single family homeowners also hate upzoning because it affects the value of their home. And I own a home, so I'm talking about myself. The more housing we have, the less that your single family home is worth. The original single-family home boundaries were based on redlining, which have a history in racism. And I think that we should take a look at that and take a look at, what kind of city do we want? The comprehensive plan, I think, had a chance and didn't quite make it. It had a chance to aim for the rafters and try to say, hey, we want to change the zoning laws. We want to build more apartment buildings. We want to account for all these 10, like Councilmember Moore said, the 0 to 30%, the 30 to 60%. It didn't do any of that. And so that was my main beef with it. But I think we should look at zoning in the city. And I don't think that's necessarily either of your jobs. I mean, maybe a little bit yours, Councilmember Moore, but I think a lot of this comes from the executive branch as well. Is that correct?
I'd like to just ask a question, please. Why are you not looking at the existing library location and moving from that point for psychological to Meridian, or Fifth, and from 105th to 95th along the hill to develop locally the light rail versus coming up and devastating Maple Leaf.
So I'm going to answer that question substantively, but that's actually a really good prompt for me to make sure that you know that we are still in our public comment period. And that is exactly, that's both a question and a comment, and I appreciate that. So our comment period ends on Monday, the 20th. So please, if you haven't already and you're interested in providing comment, we have the flyer that's around the room has information about where online to go to provide comments. So just oh, it was extended. I'm sorry, I should have said that. Yeah, because we know that a lot of people are interested, and this is complicated, and yep, we got it. We extended it. So that's number one. Just wanted to be clear on that. So the light rail stations are very much a part of the city's growth strategy. They have been for the past really almost 30 years, because even in the 1990s, we were starting to talk about light rail. So I believe you're talking about the Northgate Station. So that is in our plan, our regional center. That's our densest, most intensive designation in the comprehensive plan. We are also doing smaller area planning with property owners and stakeholders and residents in that area as well, in recognition of how important an area like that around light rail is as the city grows. But that's not the only, we're a big city, we are going to be probably more than 1 million people within the planning period for this plan. And so we're really looking at a broad swath of both locations and strategies for providing housing. The other thing around light rail is that we may be talking about a lot of high-rise construction. That is typically going to be smaller units. They may be more expensive because it's steel construction. There are a lot of trade-offs, and we also want to consider, I think other people have been talking about housing for families and more affordable housing. So there are different locations and different housing types that we also need to plan for, including the kinds of apartments or middle, duplexes, triplexes that would be more characteristic of a place like Maple Leaf.
25,000 to 30,000 units in the area from Meridian to Dinsmore to 105th to 85th, all along our side there. And closer proximity to the light rail, commercial development, transit. So I'm just wondering, how do we move the light blue down to that area versus
We're going to take 30 seconds to answer that, but we do only have about 8 minutes or so left. So we want to make sure we get to some of these other questions, but we will be following up with everyone here.
Jim say something about-
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, from the Roosevelt neighborhood to the south, we did live through quite a bit of upzoning and conversation for many years, and it was all about the light rail station. I mean, there's no question that the planning, is focused on the transit line, and we've taken thousands of units in Roosevelt, pretty much according to the design that the neighbors offered to the city. It was a arduous process over many years, but it is the right thing to do to concentrate housing, near these multi-billion-dollar public investments. It's absolutely the right thing to do. I think we've done much of that in Roosevelt, and I expect that that'll continue. But it's not the only strategy, right?
Another question.
Go ahead. You're good?
No,
Okay.
I'm good.
So I'm going to kind of take the temperature down a little bit, and I'm going to direct this back to you, Jim. As somebody who's lived through a lot of this kind of development, maybe even to a much higher degree than what's proposed in the current comprehensive plan proposal, how does increasing neighborhood density make a neighborhood more family friendly?
More family friendly. Well, we actually have a reasonably good answer to that. Again, no silver bullets, but for those of you who remember the old QFC store on Roosevelt, where the light rail station now stands, is a new building called Cedar Crossing, a remarkable project. I'm not qualified in the housing world to really describe it, but we had two, not public, but housing developers, Bellwether and Mercy Housing, acquired the property from Sound Transit. State law allowed for very special family units. I've toured the building. There are 3-bedroom apartments, right there next to the light rail station. It was another very carefully done project. Folks with lower incomes, I couldn't give you the statistics, are living there. It's really diversified our housing in Roosevelt at the station. I'm super proud that we're able to build Cedar Crossing in Roosevelt. It's hard to do those projects. We've got one, great example, and I'm sure you'll find your own way here in Maple Leaf.
I understand that everyone here is really emotionally invested in your long-term homes. As someone who sees my parents' house at 70th, when they got the letter of potential imminent domain, I started crying. And also, I think as long as we have places where community can gather, ways to know our neighbors, getting denser, like they're not going to take your home. You get to decide whether to sell your home or not. I don't think no one's coming in and stealing our property, but both for math and stuff and for my family, I need the city to be denser. I still want green spaces. I still want to see my neighbors. If you know me, I talk to and smile at everyone in this neighborhood. And it is incredibly emotional for me too, to say that I need this to come to this Seattle or I can't live here anymore. So I don't know what else I could, I'm not attacking you, but it's very emotional for me too.
Okay, I got time for one more question. So this one may be a little bit more serious. I've read that the original plan was much more ambitious before it went to the mayor. Is there any discussion that the council might push for a more ambitious plan? I think this has to do with the many more neighborhood centers that were in the plan that are no longer in the plan.
There was more housing in the original plan too.
I'll just briefly speak from the executive side of the picture here, and how the plan is developed under the mayor, the executive branch, and then it goes to the city council for their process and deliberations, and the council can make changes and adopt the final legislation. But for us, yes, there were earlier versions of the plan, and they were different than the final one that was released. That's just how we do business in City Hall. I mean, we develop ideas, we develop drafts, we change them. It's a long process. This is a complicated plan. So that was one draft that was available at a certain point in time. I can't speak for the council, but I just want to put that in context. That's not an unusual thing. And I don't know if either of the council members want to speak for.
I will say, Michael's right. Once the comp plan is finalized, it will come down for our consideration before it passes. But I'll say what's really important right now is to make sure that your voices are heard. So I was very pleased to see that OPCD extended the public comment period. I really encourage folks to write in your thoughts to the website that Michael can give you. I think it's One Seattle Comp Plan at seattle.gov.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Is the website, is the email address? Yes. The
And-
email address on the flyer, yeah.
And really have your voices heard, because to Michael's point, this is still in development, and as many more, as many people, residents that can write in what you would like to see, what your concerns are with the current plan, or if you support the current plan, that will be, really helpful. And I'll say in terms of folks that are in the D4, I want to hear from you. My staff wants to hear from you. I want to engage. I want to have the conversation. If there are things in there that you whether you like or don't like it, I want to hear about it. But I do encourage you to really have your voices heard. You have to go through OPCD because that's the formal process, and it's really the way that OPCD is doing community outreach. So I really encourage you all to engage in the process. And, you know, I will acknowledge that these are not easy conversations. So I really appreciate all the tough questions. I appreciate you inviting us this evening. Know that, you know, I can commit to being very thoughtful and working with community. This isn't about me. This is about the constituents. And, you know, I am going to be very thoughtful when plans come down to us at the city council level and we're reviewing the comp plan and voting on these pieces of legislation.
Yeah, I would just add, please send in your comments and also make sure that you are CCing my office because we're also compiling our own just to make sure we have them as well. You know, I have not obviously made up my mind, and my mind is going to be made up by what I am hearing from the community. There are places where I think that, and it's really important to remember, this is still a draft plan, and there's a lot of room for change. So there are certainly parts of the plan that I like and other parts that I'm a little bit skeptical of. It seems like in terms of Maple Leaf and a neighborhood center, maybe that's something that needs to be reevaluated. The people up at 145th, east of the highway did not get a neighborhood center, and they are itching. They want lots of development and high rise and all of that. So, you know, maybe we look at reconfiguring where some of the proposed neighborhood centers are. So I really see it as a work in progress, a work where we know at the end of the day, we're not all going to be happy with what happens. But what we can try to do is all be relatively happy with what happens, and just be, you know, it's difficult. There are a lot of tensions. There's a tension between people who are providing math and stuff. My kids and I went there when they were little all the time. We absolutely adored that store and love that store. And it's so important that you and your family be able to live here. So, excuse me. Made me emotional. But anyway, so it's just really, there are these tensions between affordability and growth and enough space and enough trees. And we're not always going to get it right. We're not always going to agree, but we are here to listen and to be thoughtful and to try to find a middle ground where we can accommodate everybody to the best of our ability.
And thank to both council members for speaking to that. But I do want to make sure everybody has the right information for providing comment. Because no, you did fine, council member. I just did a little homework really quick. So number one, on this flyer, you can go to our website, which is engage.oneseattleplan.com. That is one way to provide comment. You can click, you can open up the plan, you can click on it, you can write however many comments you care to in different sections of the plan. It's a very nice tool. It's not the right tool for everybody though. Some of you may just want to send us an email. The email address is not on this flyer. So I'm going to tell you what it is. You could also, if there's any confusion whatsoever, just go to the Office of Planning and Community Development website, and all of the information is there as well. But I'm going to tell you the email address. It's capital O, 1, capital S, Seattle, capital C, comp, capital P, plan. 1 Seattle comp plan at seattle.gov. End of the day on May 20th. And I will say one more thing, because I said it before, but it's also important. There will be another round of community engagement later this year. The cake will be a little more baked then. We're going to have zoning maps. I want to be honest, it's going to be a little bit of a different phase, but it's also a very substantive phase. The community can shape the plan and the zoning that implements it.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to the panelists for being so generous with their time, and thanks everybody for coming.
Awesome. I want to thank everyone here for all the questions, everyone online. Thank you for the thoughtful and polite conversation. We know we didn't get to every single question. There's a lot of questions, there's a lot of feelings about this. We have question and comment cards up here. If you did not get an email about tonight, please sign up. We are going to get your questions answered, and we will follow up with you all directly. So please sign up there on your way out so that we can make sure that we get all of your questions answered. We know that's really important why you guys showed up. So again, thank you to everyone who took out their time for tonight. Thank you for everyone here.
Thank you for being on the panel. Thank you for being on the panel and speaking with me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, if everyone can grab a chair on your way out and stack it by the wall to your left.
Thank you. Thank you for being on the panel. Nice to meet you. Love your shop. Been there many times. Yes.
One of you have the other mic. Hold the mic.
Yes. No. At Seattle. No.
The key thing you barely said at the end was there was.
Thank you. Yes, if you guys are looking for another One Seattle plan, we are getting more flyers. We will have them up here by the front, by the sign-up sheets. Thank you. Awesome, let's go. Ooh. Again, we do have more One Seattle Plan flyers up here if you are interested.